No. Okay, let's start now. So we're ready. Let's start. Welcome everyone who is participating in tonight's community conversation with the State Representative of Kuppa and Novi Councilwoman Breen. First, I would like to thank Grace Tai and Nicole Chen for helping organizing this event. We have a very exciting agenda tonight. Through tonight's program, we will share some useful information and resources at both city and state level. When you enter issues or concerns in the future, you know where to look for support. Now, let me introduce our moderator for tonight, Grace Lee. Grace is a respected community and a business leader. She serves as the Vice Chair for Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission and Commissioner at White House Initiative on Asian American and Pacific Islanders. Grace, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa, for the introductions. So good evening, everyone. I am Grace Lee. Thank you for joining us on this cold Saturday evening for these special editions of the AAPI Voice. AAPI Voice's mission is to promote Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders engagement and participation. Tonight, we will discuss two topics which are very important and dear to our hearts. Our discussions will focus on the resources for school and small business. We will also discuss on how to develop and foster the leadership skills of the young generations and how they can be more involved with the public services. We are very honored to have two special guests tonight. One is from the state level, Representative Padma Kuppa, and one from the city of Novi, Councilwoman Kelly Breen. The first half of tonight's programs will focus on the Q&A between me and the two representatives. And then we'll have open up the Q&A from the audience for the second half. We have over 100 people registered for tonight's program, and we would like to provide as much as information as possible related to the topics. So Representative Kuppa and Councilwoman Breen, if you could, please keep your answers more concise so we can pack in as much information as possible for our audience. With that, first, I would like to introduce our Representative Kuppa, who has a very interesting background. She and her family moved to the United States from India when she was 4 years old, but moved back to India when she was a teenager. However, during this time, she lived in the US, Americans' culture and values has engraved deeply in her. After she earned her degrees in mechanical engineering, she came back to the US for graduate school. Just like most of us, she started her new life as an immigrant with 2 suitcases and $250 in her pocket, and the unwavering belief in the land of dreams and promises. She worked for various Fortune 500 companies, including Chrysler and Ally Financial. Representative Kuppa, that is an incredible journey, which I believe many of our audience can relate it as the first generations of the immigrants. Can you share with us how your backgrounds help you adopt the new environment and your connections with the Chinese community?
Sure. Thank you so much for that introduction, Grace, and thank you all for being here. I'm very grateful to Grace and Nicole, who I met with during my first term, and Lisa, who I've known for a long time as a major, Lisa Gray, just been inspiration to me herself. So thank you all for coming and listening to some of my experiences as an engineer. It's been really interesting. How did I land here, right? So you heard a little bit about my intro that I went to public schools, going through public schools from kindergarten through 10th grade when my parents lived here. They had come here for higher education. Both my parents have PhDs. And we returned to India because my father wanted to serve his country. And my mom also wanted to be near family. And so they decided that they would serve in their local community. In fact, my mom, when she was a scientist in a major research institution, she basically volunteered to set up the daycare facility at her research institution because she knew what it was like going through being a working mother and not having someplace for her young children for daycare. And so she took the responsibility of having been through that. And so when I came back for graduate school, I knew, like my parents, that I wanted to volunteer and to help in the community. So when I was in graduate school, I was a vice president of Society of Women Engineers, and I would go into classrooms to talk to young girls about pursuing science and technology and engineering as professions, that girls could also pursue these. I also, when I became a mom, I got involved in, when I moved to Michigan, I had a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I got involved in the PTA. Then I got involved in the city because I recognized that there is a need for more representation in a city like Troy in particular, where 1/3 of the population, nearly 30% of the population, is born in another country, that we needed to see people who look like us involved in civic organizations and community issues. And so from that, people used to tell me to run for something. And I was like, I don't run for something. I'm an engineer. What do I know? I don't know politics. I don't like politics, because what I knew of politics in India, I didn't really understand and like. And here the politics is a 2-party system and it becomes very polarized. And I was like, I don't want to do this because, I'm about bringing people together, pluralism. And I did a lot of interfaith work. But in 2017, I saw, because I believe a lot in public education, that every child should have access to opportunity. And I saw Betsy DeVos getting confirmed as the Secretary of Education. Now, I understand she's a Republican and the president is Republican, but she had never stepped inside a public school. She had no background in public education or in education of any kind. And so I felt that this was not the way, and I had been to Lansing to talk to our state representatives and our state legislators. I had met Stephanie Chang in 2006, and she and I had advocated on issues around education and diversity and inclusion. And so Stephanie and I spoke, and she had wanted me to run. So I called her and I said, hey, Stephanie, can you meet me for coffee? So Senator Chang, she was Representative Chang at the time, sat down with me and talked about what I could do to run for office and how I needed to plan. And so I took classes, just like you become a Sigma black belt or whatever, I took classes, a Six Sigma black belt. My first thing I did was I took some training classes. And then I realized that a lot of the skills that I had as an engineer, as a project manager, that those are skills that I could apply to running a campaign. The second thing I realized is that once I got in, a lot of the work that I had done professionally could also be applied to bringing people together to form solutions in the state legislature. So I think that's kind of, why I did it and what I'm doing now that I'm there.
Great. Can you share with us your duties as a state representative?
Sure. I actually shadowed Leader Christine Gregg, who is the representative from Farmington Hills, who currently serves as the House Democratic leader. She's the second woman to do so. One of the things I do is I go to Lansing to be present in legislative session and vote on bills. Now, before the bill comes to the chamber, it goes through a committee process. So somebody in the community will come up with an idea that will become a bill. You turn that into a bill, and then the bill gets referred to a committee once you introduce it. I actually introduced a bill. It's based on a legislation that I, from an experience that happened to one of my constituents. They have a 19-year, at the time, their daughter was 19 years old. She has Down syndrome, and she has a smartphone, however, or a computer. And through that, she ended up being the victim of an online sexual predator. Now, we have loopholes in the law. We have laws around sexual predators to young children, but we don't have any that protect 19-year-old Down syndrome, somebody who is a vulnerable adult, who may have a very simple approach, like an autistic child. And so I could relate to that. And so when they came to me, we created a bill that would protect and create a misdemeanor and close that loophole in the law so that if somebody did that. So that got referred to a committee. So I had to make sure that I got all the different stakeholders who were involved, the attorneys, the Autism Alliance, the ARC, which is a disability network, make sure everybody was in agreement with, and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. So you get all the stakeholders and you find out if they all agree on the language that the bill is written. And then it goes to a hearing. It was referred to the Family, Children, and Seniors Committee. So we had to take it through, and people ask questions. The representatives on that committee all asked me and the people who came to testify questions about that bill. Then it passed that committee, and then it goes to the next committee. So doing the research, working with constituents, making sure that we provide the information. When a constituent reaches out, we provide information. And the thing is, sometimes people reach out to me about things that I don't necessarily have an answer. So I refer them to somebody else. Sometimes they'll come to me and say, we need a bus stop in this subdivision, an extra bus stop, because all the kids have to go to this bus stop. And then I'll say, no, we have to go to the school board. Or sometimes it'll be something about a traffic stop. So then I'll say, you have to go to the local city council traffic department. And sometimes it's a federal level issue. It might be something to do with small business. So I might reach out to the Small Business Administration at the federal level. So
okay,
it could be a lot of different things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Councilwoman Kelly Breen for City of Novi. Besides being a councilwoman for Novi, she is also a litigation attorney, a mom with 2 adorable kids. She grew up in Northville, so she has a strong passion for the community. So welcome, Councilwoman Breen. And can you share with our audience your responsibilities as a city councilwoman?
Oh, thank you, Grace. Can everybody hear me okay? I noticed some of you have a lot of lovely Zoom backgrounds. Mine is my pop-up camper. I'm in a small house, so this is my office, and I'm talking to you from my office, which is a pop-up camper in my backyard. Just very briefly, before I talk about my duties, I wanted to thank everybody for inviting me here. It is an absolute pleasure to speak with all of you tonight. And I did move to Northville when I was young. Northville and Novi are right next door to each other, and my parents still live there. I actually graduated from Northville High School before I went to James Madison College at Michigan State, and then Wayne Law. And while I was in college, my roommate, her name was Monica, and she had moved to Michigan when she was 4 years old from Hong Kong. And during that time that we lived together, and it was several years, she expressed a unique perspective that I've really come to appreciate. And we talked a lot about how her family came here for America's Promise and the unique challenges that they make. I've been fortunate to have people like Padma and groups like Samosa welcome me into their communities so I could learn more about their perspectives. And these are precious opportunities that I really enjoy, and I look forward to continued partnerships that we can have together. And on City Council, which I became involved with in 2017, this was after a few years of attending council meetings, planning commission meetings, because I actually did not appreciate some of the moves that had been occurring in Novi when it came to developments. And local government is where it's at. I believe. Local government, city government, they make decisions that affect your everyday lives. Everything from your trash service to where as Padma even mentioned, where bus stops might be, to whether or not a development is going to occur down the street from you, to whether or not you even are going to have a stormwater system that will stop your basements from flooding. So the duties of City Council, we meet at least twice a month. Most of us serve on several committees. I'm on a few committees myself. The one that I'm most proud of is actually not necessarily with the city specifically, but with the Michigan Municipal League. And the Michigan Municipal League is comprised of elected officials, city managers, attorneys, county officials from the entire state, from the smallest of towns of only a couple hundred people to the largest of cities like Detroit and Grand Rapids. And we advocate on behalf of local governments to Lansing, where Padma is, for bills that affect municipal services and elections. And that is a very critical role right now with these pending elections, because we need to make sure that city clerks have the ability to ensure election integrity and everything else. So council meetings, making decisions that affect your everyday lives, serving on committees, but most importantly, it's civic engagement and helping everyday citizens with the problems that they face. Grace, I'm sorry, but you're muted.
Hey, could you repeat what you said?
Okay, I can hear you now. Oh wait, I can hear somebody.
Oh, it was me. I just wanted to ask what she said again, like Grace.
We can't hear Grace.
So though the technology is so advanced, but we just cannot rely on all the time. So Grace, you want to just log out and log back in very quickly, and we'll just keep the chat going while we're waiting for you to come back. Okay. So when we're waiting for Grace, maybe I can ask a question on behalf of her, since we share the same first name. So the question goes to Kelly. Kelly, could you share some information? We heard Novi has a youth council. Could you share some information about like how, if a student's interested, how can they be, engaged in the council, since we have some students and also parents here, they might be interested in the topic.
Absolutely. In fact, just to piggyback on that, Padma used a word earlier that I believe we all need to embrace, and that's pluralism. And we are all more than one person. And in Novi, we are a very, very diverse community. I serve on the interview commission for the Novi Youth Council, and there is a place for any youth here in Novi if you want it. So the Youth Council, anybody who lives, any youth that lives in the city of Novi, doesn't matter if you attend Novi High School or Northville High School or South Lyon or Walled Lake, if you live within the Novi city boundaries, you can apply for the Youth Council. And when these interview processes for me are excruciating, because the people that the young men and women that apply are so unbelievably qualified. So the Youth Council, they meet regularly and they put together community events. The biggest one that they do in Novi is called Addicted to Movies and Not Drugs, where they have sort of an all-night lock-in. I'm imagining right now, and I don't have a recent update, that they are looking to still have that event, but in a socially distant, acceptable fashion. But the Addicted to Movies, Not Drugs event is their biggest thing that they do. And the proceeds from that go to Novi Youth Assistance. And most communities have a youth assistance program that help out children, even my assistance, because they provide mentoring, they provide social services, and other opportunities are also for to serve on the library board and Parks and Rec. Now, those are also very few though, but we do have opportunities within the actual city level government for youth. And as I told all these young men and women that applied, if you don't get accepted, come back. There are so many ways to be involved. We need more youth engagement. We want to make sure that the young folks of Novi feel welcome, that they know they have a purpose and a place. And so for anybody that wants to be involved, I would encourage you that you could either contact me directly through the City of Novi's website, which is cityofnovi.org. You can find me under Mayor and Council. If you wish to be involved with what I'm doing now on the campaign side, I want to make this clear. The campaign is only a component. It is just the first step, because what we do with the campaign is something that Padma, I know, does it every day as a state rep. It's something I do all day as a council member, and that's civic engagement. It doesn't end with the campaign. It involves continuous outreach to members of the community and to make sure that we can serve the people that live it, whether it's on council just in Novi or whether as a state rep, it would be within the 38th district. So I welcome everybody to try to get involved if you would like in any aspect at all.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yay.
All right. Well, I think Grace was asking some of the one of the questions I was going to ask. So I'm going to switch to Representative Kuppa. During this pandemic, there were a lot of adjustments the state has made. We're back into school again. School is back in again, but I think most of the schools are in the hybrid mode. You know, some of it's online classes, and some is live. You have to go to the school, some classes. So what's the state's plan on that, and what kind of resources the state provide for the parents?
Sure. So one thing I'll say is a lot of the things that the state has done that the governor did during the using the powers of the Emergency Management Act and the emergency powers of the governor, they were invalidated a few weeks ago by the Supreme Court. So while we were able to legislate during the pandemic, one of the things that happened is that we then had to switch gears because we had to change the way that government schools and governments worked. And so we passed a bill about 2 weeks ago that allows local school boards to meet virtually and make decisions. The other thing that we did is that we realized that a lot of the issues are at the local level. There's school boards that are elected that make decisions on how a particular school district will operate. There are elected officials who are that make the decisions along with the administration of the school. So for example, here in Troy, every month the school board has a meeting and the administration and the school board come together, and then they make decisions based on what is the current situation in Oakland County. Those are the health statistics, because county to county, the incidence of COVID is different and the availability of online resources is different. So I think the best way to find out what is happening at the school level for parents is to go to the local school district to find out. One of the things that we've done at the state is to provide many other kinds of resources. So if you go to michigan.gov/coronavirus, there is a website that has a variety of resources. And one of the resources that we know that is very important is mental health resources, because not everyone is able to work from home with the same level of enthusiasm. And so if you have questions, you can go there. In fact, there's an application called Headspace And that was made free to all Michiganders. It's a paid service, but this is to manage feelings of COVID-19 stress and anxiety. And so this is something that we know that a lot of children even are facing, not just adults. And it prevents them from functioning and learning, because children learn better when they feel safe and secure. There's also a number of other resources that are available at the state level for businesses. And for childcare, if you need childcare support, or you have some kind of healthcare issues, there are things that you can do. The website is New MI Bridges, and I'll pop it in the chat window, newmibridges.michigan.gov. And that website has a number of resources for people who are looking for some kind of help. Some people are having food issues. And so there's a lot of support that can be provided to families in need. And then I think one that I find very important to a lot of the Asian American community, including the AAPI community, is because there's so many entrepreneurs, and that is business support. So not only are there ways to help at the Michigan level, there are also PPP loans, and then the PPP money, the CARES Act money came to the state, and then the Michigan Economic Development Corporation provided grants to people, and I will pop that link in the chat window as well. But a lot of that also, again, came down through the county. So MEDC decided that rather than MEDC at the state level administering the money and providing the grants and providing the resources to small businesses, they would do it through the county. So having a county and having connections to the county government is also very important. So Kelly represents, Councilwoman Breen represents city level government. I represent state level government, and there's a third in between us, and that is county level government. And the county that we both represent, or that we live in, Oakland County, is one of the largest counties, and it has a budget the size of some states. So I would also look at county government and reach out to see what kind of resources the county government has.
Yeah, I agree. I saw Oakland County, they published the funds and the grants available about a couple months ago. So Kelly, they kind of switched to you because Representative Kuppa talking about a lot of decisions on the schools changes, adjustments. It's on the city level. I know you have been heavily involved with the school of Novi. So what kind of adjustment does school of Novi have made during this period?
So I want to say, first of all, that next to the governor, I think teachers have the most difficult positions in the entire state right now, in the nation. My husband is an educator. My father is 74 years old, and he is still teaching. And one of the things that has come down, and as Representative Kuppa said, the school districts are empowered individually to make the decisions for their districts, because every district is different. Every district has different needs. Some of the more rural districts, they will have transportation and significant internet access issues. Novi is very fortunate. We were able, within the Novi district itself, they were able to provide one-for-one devices to each and every child in this. However, Novi, as I mentioned before, the school district feeds into South Lyon, Walled Lake, and Northville as well. And then there are also private schools here. And when I was out knocking doors, for example, in South Lyon, there were some children that did not have devices. So school boards are essential as far as finding information out as to what's going to happen next. They're the ones that are going to be making decisions based upon resources as well as case count. And as far as what Padma said, is a lot of things coming down to the local level. She's right. It is critical to have partnerships with the county. The city of Novi, we do have on our website, cityofnovi.org, there's a section there that says COVID-19. And for anybody who needs resources in Novi, you can see that there's separate resources for individuals as well as businesses. And many of those resources that are available for businesses also involve going through the county. There are grants that are available through the Small Business Association. The Chamber of Commerce has been extremely helpful. And as a city government, we've made changes to our sign ordinances, allowing temporary gathering permits, whatever we can do to ensure that our small businesses can thrive. It's no easy task by any means, but we are all working together throughout all levels of government and doing whatever we can to ensure that our small businesses can make it through this. And the schools, again, they need to make their own decisions based upon their resources and their individual needs.
Great, thank you. We're going to switch the gears right now. We're going to talk about the second part of the discussions about how to develop and foster the leadership skills of the younger generations. Based on the August 2018 Harvard Business Review, that the Asian professionals are the least promoted ethnic groups to the management level. So I think this is some of the challenges, not only I think some of our probably audience are facing right now, but we can foresee that for the younger generations. So we need to start to prepare to develop their leadership skills early. So Representative Kuppa, since you have been working for the Fortune 500 before, you probably see the firsthand about that corporate ladder. You know, we're talking about blue ceiling, also talking about sticky floor, because that's one of the challenges with a lot of Asians. You got hired, but you got stuck. You cannot move up. So I would like to hear your perspective, you know, how we can helping the younger generations to develop their leadership skills and in the future.
So actually, that's a very important aspect of why I'm here too. I was working at Chrysler and I was stagnant. And I left. And one of the things that I realized is that if I had been a little bit higher, some of the things that I was doing outside of Chrysler, I wouldn't have had to take the time off to do, and they would have been more respected. Because I was at the level that I was at, the things that I was doing for diversity and inclusion to help the immigrant communities, they weren't recognized or valued. And so I left. I had to take time off all the time. And so I actually took a lower job from a project coordinator, project manager of a global project at Chrysler. I went back to being a business analyst for multiple reasons. That wasn't the only reason. And as I was doing that, I realized that one thing that we can do is to assume leadership positions ourselves, different kinds of leadership. And sometimes those don't have to be paid leadership positions. They can be volunteer. I mean, think about all the different things that happen in a city. There are so many community organizations. I think as immigrants, I see this a lot of the time. We get involved in our linguistic organization. I speak a language called Telugu. So there's a Detroit Telugu Association. There's a Troy Telugu Association. We don't step outside of our comfortable silos. And I think it's really important that we're immigrants, especially as an immigrant. We're all immigrants. I came here not knowing, what would become of me. My parents actually actively discouraged me from coming back. They were very nervous. What would happen? I was 22 and a half, 23. They were very nervous about what's going to happen. You know, young unmarried girl coming to the United States on her own. And my mom had some bad experiences and she was very concerned about what would happen to me. And she had seen some of the things that happened to women in young women, right? And so I think that we are risk takers. And so we need to get into those places where we are not normally seen as adults, especially when we establish ourselves. The other thing that we need to do is bring the children in, encourage the kids. And I really want to give a shout out to Nicole for introducing me to Julia, and then to recognize Julia Wang. She's here tonight. She is actually on my campaign. She volunteers about 10 hours, between 6 to 10 hours a week, depending on her academic commitment, and is learning from the grassroots what it means to organize. And these are skills that she will take with her as she finishes high school and goes to college and goes into the professional environment. The other thing that I do, because I see the challenge for women especially, I chair the Equal Pay Task Force in the state legislature. And I need people like Kelly with me because it's really important that those of us who are moms, we know that sometimes we get paid less. In fact, I was on a panel discussion with 2 accountants at the Troy Chamber of Commerce on one day this past week. And they were saying how women, when they get their MBA, they make the same amount of money when they come out of school, when they graduate from the MBA program. But you look at them 15 years later, there's like a 50% difference in pay because women don't get paid. And so these are all things that I think are very important and that we should be informed and take action. So you have to have the good information and then take action. And so I think Julia is ready to go rock the world. Maybe she'll be president someday, right?
So I know on the federal level, they have internship programs to get into the federal leadership positions. Is there anything set up for the state?
Sure. I have every semester, I have 2 to 3 college students that volunteer with my office. And then if they've been with my office for a year, we're allowed to pay them as well. But we have college students of all backgrounds. In fact, this past summer, we had a couple of completely virtual internships. And right now on my campaign, I have a young man who is from Berkeley, California. He's from UC Berkeley. And he has been a virtual volunteer. And Julia will tell you, she's been completely virtual. I haven't met her in person yet.
Great. So Kelly, you mentioned about there's a youth programs in the city of Novi. Is there something similar or was totally different?
So we have, as we discussed, we have the Novi Youth Council, and there are lots of other ways for youth to be involved. I can tell you right now on my personal campaign, which is to advance to the same level that Padma is, we do have opportunities. I have several young people working for me of various and very diverse backgrounds. And I'm very excited because they're able to help us understand how to reach people in their community and have more direct conversations and very honest conversations about their needs and how we can help them. The Novi High School, again, Novi is, I think, the 17th largest city in Michigan, not far behind Troy where Padma is. And it is huge and diverse to the point where nearly 25%, and Nicole and I were talking about this before, nearly 25% of Novi's population is Asian. And there's so many different ways for youth to be involved that way. People come to Novi often because of the schools. And so it is the school system that does provide a lot of opportunities for youth through various organizations. I mean, it is absolutely astounding to look at these even the videos that some of the kids in the high school put out, where they, and I interviewed today with one of their student outlets. They interviewed me about the current political state as well as what's happening in the city. So the primary place for youth to get involved in the schools is through them directly, but there's always a place on, we just call it Team Breen, a Team Breen for anybody that wants to be involved in any capacity. And you can also go to the City of Novi's website. There's another section there for youth services where they talk about ways that the youth can get involved as well.
Great. Well, time flies when we have fun. So right now we're going to open up for the Q&A from the audience. So Grace and Nicole, I'm not sure, do I see the questions or do you maybe?
So the audience can open their mic or send their question in the chat and we'll read it, to Representative Kuppa and Councilwoman Breen. Actually, someone just private chat me a question. So
Okay.
She's a parent from Novi. Let me read her question very quick. We understood from the conversation, the school's situation during the COVID-19 is depend on the school district, right? But this parent is concerned, seems like there's more cases happening at the school in Novi. And school is also talking about going to go virtual starting like a January. So cases like that, is there any way to get government involved to make a better decision overall, to protect the students?
So she's right. Novi has had a few cases. And in fact, right after we opened, there were 9 cases identified at the high school. One thing that became very clear very quickly is that the protocols that the school had in place worked, because they were able to do the contact tracing. They were the source of it, and it had to do with a particular sports team. And they were able to actually move faster than the county to make sure that those cases could be isolated and nobody else would be impacted. And I believe it stopped at the high school there. And of course, there was that horrible moment where I got notification that somebody at my child's elementary school had been infected. They were able, again, to react quickly. Now, the school board met last Thursday and they voted to continue the current model. Now, that being said, the school board is able to meet remotely and react quickly if necessary in order to keep everybody safe. The current model is that you could either be all virtual or you can be hybrid, meaning that the children will go to school 2 days a week. I know that there are some rumors flying around that as the cases increase, we may shut down. That is the case, I think, for every single school district in the state of Michigan. If the numbers do shoot up and they ratchet up, because our young folks are the most likely to be asymptomatic but carriers, it is definitely a concern. And we, as far as I know, though, there are no plans to shut down after January. Right now, they're going to keep the status quo, and I want to reassure the parent, at least from what I have heard, that the protocols in place are working. However, the best source for that information is the local school district, and contact any member of the school board. I particularly am close with Kathy Hood and Dr. Danielle Ruskin. Or you can contact Dr. Steve Matthews, who is a superintendent, and they will be very quick to respond to let them know what is happening. Or feel free to email me directly. The best way to reach me is either through the city's website, or you can email me at hello@kellybreen.com.
Okay.
I just want to point out in the chat window, the governor appointed a task force on education called the Return to School Advisory Council. In that, she had a lot of people who were involved that are part of these Return to School Advisory Council, as well as the Task Force on Education. She had people who were involved in business, people who were involved in schools, both as teachers, as administrators, as school board members. And so it's good to check that list of people and see if there's anyone there that you know or that you recognize. But my hope is that we will start volunteering in these places so that, someday, when hopefully we'll never live through another pandemic, but in addition to this kind of volunteer effort, there are many other ways, boards and commissions that are appointed by the governor and by even at the city level and at the state level. So it's really important that we get involved and find out what those boards and commissions are and volunteer. We talked a little bit about the Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission, and I think that's a good one. But just at the local level, making sure that you go volunteer with the school board, find out what kind of advisory boards they have, and then work your way into being one of those decision makers at the school level.
Okay, so Nicole, Grace, do you have a question?
Actually, for any reason, the audience can private message me for all the questions. So I'm gonna take a few from the question that they sent it to me. So there's 2 people ask very similar questions regarding the internship at your office's Representative Kuppa. So one is, do you accept the high school students? And also, actually, the question goes to both of you. For students who are doing virtual internships with you, can you summarize what kinds of tasks and activities they can participate as an intern?
So for me, I have only college students as interns in the legislative office. On the campaign side, I have both high schoolers like Julia and college students. As far as applying to the office, you can actually write to the email that I popped in there, we are looking for, we can only take 2 or 3, but one of the things I will say is you should always apply to the legislator whose district you live in or that you grew up in, because then you have a better sense of responding. Because the number one thing that you will help with is in my office is with constituent responses. So I have received over the last 20 months, since I've been in office, since January of 19, I've received over 5,000, close to 5,600 constituent emails, questions, postcards, and that I respond to when they have questions about something. And that would require that they be able to do a little bit of research. And so especially if it's something that's local, they need to be able to navigate what are the local resources that are available. And then we provide them the state level information and some training. I have 2 legislative staff. So it doesn't have to be somebody who's interested in politics. I wish I had done a college, when I was in college, I had an opportunity to do an internship for a semester like that with somebody, because I would have understood better how, because we understand the theory. When you go to school, I see some of the students here. When you go to school, you learn about the 3 branches of government, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. But it's when you work in a legislative office at the state level, I think that you get the most understanding of how those 3 interact and who are the other players. And that way, when you figure out what you want to do, you will be in a better situation to influence those as an adult.
Okay, I know we're talking about city and state today, but I'll kind of plug in for the White House. White House, they do also receive internship applications every year. I believe they start receiving the application for 2021 to 2022 right now, but they are only looking for the college students at this point. And then they also have another level, it's called presidential management internship. That part is for the graduate students. And they are looking for not just the low-level interns and the regular interns. They are really those are the people they will groom up to the higher level in the cabinets. So those are the ones I can find the email, the application information. I'll send it to Grace and Nicole. If anybody interested, they can share it with you. Okay. So do you have more?
Yeah, I have more questions. Okay, so next one is regarding the roads in Novi. This parents asking, the roads in Novi did not have much changes. There are more houses built than 10 years ago, but roads are changed. What can you do, Councilwoman Kelly, to improve our city living conditions?
Wow, that is a loaded question. And Padma, as a former planning commission member, I'm sure she can appreciate that there are so many answers that would take me hours to go through, but I'm going to parse it down. So city council, we make decisions as far as developments only if it comes to us under our charter. So if a development that is being proposed fits within the zoning ordinance, it's not going to come to us unless it involves something with a woodlands permit or a wetlands permit, or so if it's not a rezoning, it's privately owned property and it's not going to come to us. That being said, I believe it is absolutely essential that our infrastructure be updated as developments occur. And that is where on city council, we have a variety of opinions on how to do that. Now, to make the roads better, what I can say, and I will type this into the chat, and this is why my screen looks a little awkward because I was trying to make it so I could see people, but also type, but I will type this in there. There's the capital improvement program, and there are some other resources that show you what roads are being scheduled for repair and when and why and how. Now, even number roads are actually under the county's jurisdiction. Odd number roads like 9 Mile, those belong to the city. So it's a partnership between the city and the county for some of those roads. And then our ability to repair them also depends on state revenue. And that is actually the number two reason, public education funding being one. But the number two reason I want to join Padma in Lansing is to make sure that communities get more support from the state so they can address their unique needs, whether it is a water pipe system, because, for example, we have to coordinate water mains replacement with roads being repaired, or whether you need a road widened. It is a very complicated thing. But there's a capital improvement program for big projects. There's our neighborhood roads program, which we have doubled down on in recent years, and I will be glad to put that into the chat so you can easily see what roads are being repaired and why and how. And I look forward personally to join Padma in Lansing to make sure that communities like Novi and Troy and everywhere in between throughout Michigan get the support they need from the state in order to address these specific problems at home.
Okay, Grace, we're 9 o'clock, so should we take one more questions?
Can I add to that question just one?
Sure. Okay.
This is so applicable because I go back to, I volunteered at the local level and I learned a lot. I was involved in developing the city of Troy's master plan. I was on the zoning board and I was on the planning commission. So I learned a lot. I had to take classes for each of those. And I really agree with you that we make decisions with data models, right? All of us, anybody, engineers, data architects out there, you know what I'm talking about. We make decisions based on data models. When I was on planning commission, I used to ask all the time when we made decisions, where is the traffic department getting their data models? Because it seems like the roads are so much busier today than they were 10 years ago in Troy. And I think Novi's going through the same thing. And we have all these newer construction. The developer would come in and clear cut and put 100 tiny houses, and what do you do? And I was in planning commission and I had to rule on some of those site development plans. So one of the things I would say is get involved at the local level and find out who's doing what and why they're doing it. And right now we have on our city council people who are actually like you, not happy with so much development without addressing the traffic issues. Now on the second part of it, which is the roads, I think that's a really good question because we talked about what are my skill set that I bring as an engineer into the state legislature. Well, I'm one of the only engineers in the legislature and I love math. That's why I became an engineer. And one of the things I learned, not only is the school funding model, not the math behind the way we fund our public schools wrong, the way we fund our roads and the way we fund our local governments are also flawed. And over the last 20 years, the amount of money that we have been giving back to local governments based on our property taxes and all the other things, the formulas, it has slowly been shrinking. So it keeps going down. So what we used to get, especially if you adjust it for inflation, it's a lot less than what we used to get 25 years ago. It's been consistently going down. And then the last thing is on road funding. We use a formula that was developed in 1963 at the state level. And what we do is we fund per mile based on the mileage of a road, not the lanes on a road. So if I in Troy and Kelly in Novi have a 6-lane road, but up north in Iron Mountain, they have a 2-lane road. For 1 mile of that road, we get the same amount of money. Does that make sense to you? Because that means that 1/6 of the money that they're spending is what we're spending, or 1/3 of what they're spending is what we're spending per mile. And so that's something that needs to change. And so there's a lot of other formulas like this that I would like to see changed, but we need people like Kelly and me who are interested in working together, breaking down the problem and writing the law. So she's a lawyer, I'm an engineer. We're going to get it done.
Great. So Grace, do you have any more questions?
I know we're short on the time, but we have 2 more. I promise these are like the 2 last questions.
Okay.
Grace, before those 2 questions, do you mind I ask Kelly? Kelly, I know you have the passion, to provide opportunity for youth, for the leadership and the civic engagement opportunity. Would you please let us know what's your plan for doing that?
So there's a couple different things. Now, being on city council, I do not have the robust program that Padma does. When I do get to Lansing, I would like to mirror that. And hopefully we will be able to learn from each other how we can expand and get more youth involved. Now, unfortunately, because of the fact that I'm on council, I don't have that budget nor those capabilities. However, whether you want to get paid or volunteer, we will find a place for any youth that wants to be involved. There are other opportunities within the city itself. One thing I would like to see Novi do is similar to what I think it's Farmington Hills does, where they have a mayor's youth council. This is something I will be speaking to our mayor about, where it would mirror what is similar to the Ambassador Academy, where youth would come to the city, be able to learn about each different department, the function of each different department, and see how actual city government works, because city government is what affects your everyday life. So there's a lot of things I would like to do, and then there's what I'm able to do. But I will tell you this, if anybody wants to be involved, I will help them find a place to be involved.
So right now you are, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let me just add, as a state representative, I'm paid $71,000 a year. That is my salary. And I have to do whatever I do in that year per year. That's what I get paid. Kelly Breen, as a councilwoman, do you even get $200 a year?
I get $300 a month.
Okay, $300 a month. So it is not a job. Hers is a volunteer position to cover some of the expenses. And so mine is a lot less salary than I would make as an engineer. But the reason we are both doing this is because we want to serve and make the government better so that it works for everybody.
Okay, Grace, your turn.
Okay, so like I said, 2 more questions, okay? The second to the last question is, my kids, unfortunately, was referred to Chinese or being called, labeled with the Chinese virus at the school by the other classmates. What would be your recommendation to handle the situation the best way?
So I'm gonna jump on that one. This is something that's very close to my heart because bullying is something that happens to children who are different. I was labeled dothead when I was growing up and made fun of. When I moved to India, they made fun of me because I had an American accent. And I'm always very sensitive to children being bullied because when they don't feel safe, they don't learn well. And so what we recommend first is reaching out to your local teacher and your local school to find out what resources are in that building. The second thing I would say is as a state representative, one of the things that I have actively sought is, in fact, the first question that I asked the governor when she did her shutdown order, it was all the state legislators were on an emergency call with the governor when she was making that. And the first thing I asked her, I said, what are you going to do to make sure there's no bias? Because by that point, the president had already started calling it the Chinese virus. And I was very upset because I knew that once you label it like that, it's going to cause problems. And so Senator Chang and I, with the Attorney General, have made an effort to make sure that people are informed about the hate crimes, and the Attorney General has a division with the Assistant Attorney General on hate crimes. We've even gone on AAPI Voice to talk about that. I've talked about it. I've also, the video on Facebook Live that we did with the Attorney General about hate crimes is there, and the Assistant Attorney General who leads the hate crimes division. Her name is Sunita Dodamani. She's Indian American, born and raised in this country. And I highly suggest that we start reporting incidents. And I'll tell you, in 2016, before the presidential election, in Troy, one of the largest Hindu temples in the state, the one that is in Troy, they had the N-word written all over the sign. And the temple leadership, they would only go as far as taking a picture and reporting it to the police. They didn't want it beyond that. They didn't want to make it aware, make other people aware. And part of the problem is when we hide these things that happen to us, people don't know, and then they won't stop doing them. I mean, you know this in your professional life. If we don't acknowledge a problem, we can't solve it. So if somebody has treats us with bias, we have to be willing to speak up in a way that it will get resolved. And I think that's one of the things that I take very seriously is I'm not trying to make the other person feel guilty. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. All I want to do is stop that kind of bullying from happening. And so we need to work with our allies. And that's why I think Kelly is awesome, because she did that. The governor has been awesome. I went to an event at the governor's house that was specially for women. And she mentioned that she had done a dinner for the Muslim festival of Ramadan. So I said to her, I said, hey, would you be willing to do an event for Diwali? And she said, yes, and we did one. So then I went back to her and I said, hey, would you be willing to do an event for the Lunar New Year? And she did. And so to me, that's so important when the governor as an ally celebrates each of our cultures. That makes America richer. That makes Michigan richer. And that's why I really admire people like Grace and Suk Wilkinson and Lisa, like people who step out. So please take the time. I know our careers are important, but if our children are going to have a bright future, we have the ability right now as adults to step forward and get involved.
Okay, Grace, you have the last one.
Okay, so last question is coming from a student. He wanted to know which hardship that you came across during your career path proved to be the most challenging.
Well, let's start with Kelly, and then we'll go back that way.
Well, what hardship proved to be the most challenging in my career path? So, there's been a lot of, and it depends on the career path. Like Padma, I've had a few different twists and turns. I would say though that mine was more of a crisis. Mine was a crisis of conscience as well. As a litigator, I started out doing defense litigation, primarily for workers' compensation. So my job was to represent very, very large employers and insurance companies and defend them against claims from their employees that they were injured. And as I learned more about the system and the people, these employees, I discovered that the way Michigan's laws are set up are completely disingenuous and disenfranchising to injured workers. And most people have that work ethic. They want a job, they want a purpose, they want to be able to provide for their family. And I did this job for well over a decade. And then I decided I couldn't do it anymore. And it became kind of obvious because one day my boss was out of town, and this is a very specific thing. The attorney for the injured person called me because she had 3 special needs children she was trying to adopt. And because her workers' compensation had been denied, she had gone for long-term disability, and the long-term disability company had cut her off, and her house was going up for sheriff's auction in 3 days. And I know exactly what I would have been asked to do if I had gotten a hold of my boss. And he would have said, leverage this to get a quick and easy, small settlement so we can resolve this case. But he was out of town. So I leapfrogged over him and I went directly to the employer and I said, this is what's going on. She will lose her children if she loses her home because she had not yet adopted them. So instead, I sat there all day with her attorney and we worked it out with the long-term disability provider to make sure she could get a check delivered the next day so she wouldn't lose her home. Okay. About a year later, I flipped sides and I started representing injured workers.
That's a great story. So I think we are run out of time. It's 9:15. So So thank you, Representative Kuppa and Councilwoman Kelly for very informative and engaging discussion tonight. We learned a lot from you. We wish you the best on your elections and hope we will continue to work together to advocate for the AAPI community. And I would also like to thank all of the the audience who's with us tonight. Hope you have a better understanding of the government resources and also the internship programs available if your kids are interested. If there's any other topics you would like to discuss, please contact AAPI Voice, because what's important to you is important to us. And lastly, I would like to remind everyone to vote. We can all help make a difference in the community by exercising our right to vote. The election is coming up soon. Vote the person that you can trust and depend on, no matter who you are voting for, but please do vote. With that, I thank you for everyone again for your participation tonight. We wish you a pleasant evening and good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.